There's four main options that you can do when you want AI in your company, when you want automations to be implemented in your company. You've gone through phase one, right? You understand your workflows, you know maybe what you want, and you're trying to get to the point now where how do I build this? How do I get this into my company and get it working? And most importantly, how do I not waste a lot of money? How do I make sure it's actually useful and it's helping me and that it actually gets completed and main. And so there's four main trains of thought when you're thinking about this. Option number one is the easiest. I recommend this for anyone who has a little bit more time on the hand. This is being more younger companies who are just starting out. This would be the best option because it requires time, but it doesn't require kind of as much knowledge and you can start really at the beginning. And that is DUY or do it yourself. And basically what this means is you open up Claude or Codex, which is ChatGPT's version of Claude, and you just start learning. You just start prompting, asking it what to do, asking kind of you have your idea of what your automation will be, but you need it coded, you need it converted to software. So you can actually use English, which is the most popular coding language now. You actually use English to just translate your idea into code. There's a lot of benefits of doing it this way. Number one is you start to actually understand what's going on if you're paying attention. Option number, or kind of like the second part of that would be you you can be involved in every part of the build process. And what's great about that is that you're not having to guess, or you're not being in the dark about where your project's going. The third part, and this would be kind of moving to the downsides of do it yourself, is that it takes a lot of time. And by a lot of time, I mean that although development times are like overall project times are very much decreased right now, it's still going to take you a couple weeks, maybe a month and a half just to crank out the initial version of the project. If it's a big one, if it's a small little one, you probably get it done in a weekend, maybe a few days. Here's the part you got to be most worried about, and that is when you're doing it yourself and you don't have a background in you know engineering and in computer development, you'll tend to overlook things that you don't want to over. And what these things end up being is helping you later on from not getting hacked, not losing all your work, and developing a project that can actually be maintained by someone else. Because eventually, if you keep compiling more and more features without trying to compress and trying to build an architecture for your project, for your automations, what you'll end up is with a very large project, and you'll actually hit the limit of what these AI coders can do because you'll have it'll just be way too big of a project, and you'll either pay for it in complexity. The AI won't be able to figure out all the moving parts, and it'll start getting worse at its job. It'll start adding features that are already there, and so you'll have duplicate of the same features. Or on the flip side, it'll cost you a lot of money because the AI will have to read through, your 1,000 files that you've created, and what that'll just turn into kind of a token burning. And that's what we're seeing a lot with, vibe coding projects and kind of do it yourself projects is that, they're really great and they're really cool. And a lot of people are able to get kind of a posted on LinkedIn screenshot version very quickly, within a few days. But when you ask them, but when they themselves try to take that project and make it a long term and make it a core part of their business, it starts to break down in these kind of ways. And if it's not breaking down, then they're spending a lot of money with the tokens to try to fix it. And so that's kind of the downside of do it yourself version. But I think it's a very great start. And if you are a new business owner, I think that's the best way to do it. Or if you have kind of a little bit more time on your hands, this is the best option because you learn a lot about the process. And here's what I'll do for you as a kind of everyone actually, as a bonus, I will go ahead and link kind of what I think are the five. I'm not going to try to overcomplicate this guide, but I'll say what the five most important security blankets or things that you want to, feed into your AI to tell it to code or design in this way. And these are the five most there are five biggest mistakes I see vibe coding and do-it-yourself projects kind of lacking, and what kind of ends up biting them in the ass later on. So I'll have that in the link below. So that moves us on to the second option. Let's say you don't have time for do-it-yourself. You don't want to even touch the computer, and that, like, your job is this. You don't want to get into development. You don't want to get into all that stuff. Totally fine. What's your other option? An option that kind of popped up at the beginning of this AI revolution was this agency model where you hire a company or you hire a freelancer to actually go ahead and build out a system for you. And this system would be custom to your business, but at the end of the day, they kind of drop it at your doorstep and take the money and kind of go. And and that's fair. And a lot of people at the beginning didn't know how this process would work. But the doubt is that there's no software on this planet that can survive uh, after being created in a month. There's no software on this planet that can not have bugs and not have issues with it later down the line. Nobody's capable of creating complex systems that are personalized to your business and then have a turnaround of 1 month and have it work out completely. It needs maintenance, it needs maintenance. You might realize that you wanted it done this way and it was coded that way, but down the line, it's you actually want it this way, or this way works better for your business. And the first way ends up costing you more time or money. And so, what you really want is to not hire someone to just drop code or automations at your doorstep and run, because that's where you see the big AI projects that fail. And I'm sure a lot of you have seen all over the news that, a lot of these AI projects are not economically returning. They're not turning profit for these companies. And that's just because a lot of these projects are poorly made and not maintained, or they're made by someone who doesn't want to do the due diligence, doesn't want to put in the proper steps to make it maintainable, make it adjustable. And I think the biggest one is the amount of time that you need to spend kind of babying it and adjusting it as it goes. So back to the do it yourself example. If we do it ourselves, we have to be prepared with the option of putting in 10 to 20 hours per week in maintaining it and kind of on the right path to adding the correct guardrails to make it kind of uncrackable. These are some of the things you got to consider when you buy a agency model, and that's just buy from someone and they drop it at your doorstep and you start using it. That's kind of the downside of that. Okay, option number 3 is platform. So let's say you realize that, messy, unmaintained software is not the way to go. You don't want to do it yourself because you don't have time to maintain it. What's another option? You could buy into a platform. And there's tons of platforms out there. Basically, this would be a big SaaS element, huge software which contains like a lot of features and allow various or otherwise automations for your company. And some of these platforms are great. I'd see the really great part about them is that they're usually actively maintained by hopefully engine and computer scientists who know what they're doing. And so you're getting a product that is you don't have to spend that extra 20 hours a week doing, is really big plus. And for the most part, they're pretty economical. You know, give or take some platforms, but you can really find a huge platform, find the certain features that you want, kind of ignore the rest, but get that whole package. Bring it into your company, and I think that's reasonable, and it's a good option for companies that just they know what feature they want, they know what automations they want, and they're willing to, you know, take these drawbacks, which I'll explain in a minute, to the platform. I'm trying to be, but sometimes it has issues. And the main issues I see with it are it's not personalized whatsoever to your company. So in in this company's effort to make the platform, obviously it's going to be very generic because it has to work for many different companies. And so what you'll start to find is that your automations, your reports, your custom document generation will look just like everyone else's custom document generation who uses that platform. I'd say so that's like the big downside, or one of the big downside is it's not very personalized to your company, which can be a good or a bad thing. Like I mentioned before, since it's not personalized to your business, when you need service and when you need something fixed, it has to happen at a grand scale. Since AI is so new, there's a lot of things that need babying and need like a human to review. And when you have a big platform like that, it's going to be up to your team to go in there and make sure that all the AI is like coming out what it's producing what you want it to produce, especially with the AI generations. You're going to have to dedicate a person to go in and baby the platform, and they'll spend a majority of their time, reviewing the output, making sure it lines up with your company, and kind of uh, gating it at every turn. So you'll have to expect that you'll need someone at your company to be looking in to the results of these platforms and what they're giving you. And kind of a side note, it doesn't apply to every platform, but always be wary of what they might do with your data. A lot of these platforms are, they're going to take your data and they're going to use it to improve their models. It's what every technology company does. And while that is usually fine in concept, you'll have to see their policies and see how they actually use your data. So if they're using your data to make another business really well, then that's kind of a conflict of interest. So that's something to consider. Okay, last option, and I saved the best for last. And what's your fourth option? And this is kind of how we made Workflow Autopilot, because it's just the best option. And that is, automation slash AI partnerships. They're also called fractional agencies or fractional technology groups within your company. And what this kind of looks like is you're buying a partner. You're getting a company and you're asking them to be part of your team and part of your success going forward. And so, what's the downside? Let's start with downsides first. It's going to be, and that's just how it is when you have a team that's working with you every day, every week to make your systems, your AI, make sure it's maintained, reviewing all your stuff. It requires a lot more manpower. It's just going to be more expensive. But the benefit is that you have a team and they're working with you and they actually care about your outcome. Because if you're not winning, kind of they're not winning. And since they're working with you every day, they're going to really care about your outcome. So what's kind of included in this would be you have someone actually watching the outputs of your AI daily. You want to make sure that the people that you're partnering with have the time to maintain your applications, and they're dedicating at least a month or a month and a half to to the development of your AI workflows and your automations. Because even though the product will be built and it'll be highly customized and integrated into your business, it'll still need a lot of dedicated focus in those first month and a half to make sure it's doing everything you want it to do. Make sure, most importantly, is it making you money? Is it actually helping? Is it improving your economics? Is it making your company more profitable? And if it's not, things need to change. So, what you kind of want to look for is companies that have that engineering background and they have that ability to make your automations and make your AI solid, security proof, not selling your data to another country, and it's actually maintainable. That's on one side. On the other side, you want the business operations side. So you want to make sure that they're tracking the metrics that are important to you. This is a churn rate. This is conversion rate. This is how many of the people that use this automation, how many of the clients that use this automation are churning versus not churning. And so these are the kind of business aspects you want to keep an eye on. You want to make sure that this company is able to track. I see a lot of companies out there that are really good at one thing or really good at another thing. You have, whole companies of MBAs, which they're really good at the business side of things, but the technology side fails. And it ends up costing you, the client, a lot of money in AI tokens or in switching teams or trying to fix it yourself and breaking things. And while I always encourage people to get in there and fix it themselves, you want to expect the amount of time it's going to take to really learn this system and figure it out and kind of be able to maintain it. So yeah, those are the four options that I see for when you know what AI automations, when you know kind of what you want, but you're stuck on that implement step and who to go to, what to do, what's the best way to go about it. I think those are some good ways. I think that if you're kind of starting out and you're a smaller company, I think the do-it-yourself version is a really great angle. First of all, it's free and you learn a lot, and for the most part, it's nothing that a experienced team can't pick up after the fact. So it's a good start. So if you are a business and you are between 20 or 30 to 50 employees and you're doing north of $1 million per year, I highly encourage you to check us out at workflowautopilot.com. This is the stuff we love to do, and we help these build out their entire automation cycle, build out their AI agents, and get them from 1 to 100 in terms of profit, obviously. So if that sounds like you, I look forward to talking with you.